Hello? You're muted, Adam. Can you hear me?
Yes, I am. I can.
Cool. Sorry I'm late. I had to run. I don't know if you saw in the chat. Great. Okay. People are going to start coming in soon.
Mm-hmm.
Everything okay?
Yep.
Great.
Just
so let us hang around, and I'll if you want, I'll just keep my eye on the chat and then break in if there are questions that come up. But otherwise, just let you get on with it. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. And you want to start maybe at 5 past the hour to give people a chance?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think so.
It looked like the other talk was overrunning or was going long, so.
Okay.
The talk, I mean, you're a separate track, yeah. So don't think it'll matter too much. But let's give people a few minutes to arrive.
That's no problem. Oh, interesting. Didn't I? Firefox, very good. I'm so glad I have this computer now with 64 gigs of RAM. Because right now,
is that a requirement for FontLab?
No.
Just helps. The more the better.
No, I'm just running 6 or 7 operating systems right now on the same machine. So
yeah.
So that's a requirement, more or less, if you.
It's been interesting with everybody working from home and how they've cobbled together their various gamer quality PCs.
Oh yeah.
Trying to find the parts, scrounge up the parts.
Yeah, it's funny. A designer I know, we were in a meeting and he was telling, like, he works on a Mac for his design work, and he's been talking about this kind of gamer machine that he bought. And then somebody asked the question, was like, "Oh, so is it for work?" No. Just I just like to play some games. sometimes. So that's a Windows PC for the actual gaming, and maybe I'm gonna render a video or something, but that's not required.
Yeah, my kid who was 14, we built one early on in the pandemic days before everything was impossible to get, which was fun. So we're just going to wait for a few minutes to let people filter in. I know there was a talk running a little late. So yeah, just make yourselves comfortable. Hello, greetings from Greece. Hi, Greece. It's Mariana. Tom is here. Erwin, Vlad. Lots of friends. Luke is here. Hi, Luke. Great quotes in the CNBC. Thank you for those. Ada. Eli. Cool. Well, the numbers are ticking up. We will wait a few. Yuri is here. Let's just wait a few minutes. Hi, Ada. Hi, Eli. Okay, it seems as if oh, another one. Just when it kind of settles down, I think, oh, we should get started. Oh, Mamoon is here. Hi, Mamoon. Hi, Sandro. Roger, George. Okay. And we're recording, and we've been recording for a while, so that's good. Hello from sunny Chicago. So Adam, where are you right now?
In Warsaw. Warsaw, Poland.
Back home.
Yep.
So there's already a question come up. Would you get the later? Is it possible to control the position of the strike through in a variable font the same way it is possible with instanced fonts? You going to address that one?
I can.
We can come back to it. But there's already a question in the Q&A.
Okay, good.
And that's from Rodrigo Sayani. Hopefully that's correct pronunciation. Sorry. Okay, looks like we settled down about 26 participants. So, do you want?
Excellent.
I think everybody here knows Adam. I don't even need to introduce him. He's. Oh, and I got the pronunciation right. Thank you, Rodrigo. Okay, so yeah, Adam, please take it away.
Hello, everyone.
Post questions in the chat. I'll keep my eye on the chat, and I'll jump in and interrupt Adam like I just did, if anything interesting.
Yes, excellent. Very good. Yeah, I'll hello, everyone. This is this is supposed to be a bit of an exploratory session that 2 days ago I was talking about kind of testing variable fonts from the font developer or type designer perspective. And I think the experience shows that on quite a few occasions, fonts, people basically, or companies release fonts that have been tested in some environments but not others. And of course, the world is changing quickly. So especially for variable font support, we have the situation where we've got some apps that, well, we have web browsers that support variable fonts on certain operating systems. We have certain versions of operating systems that allow you to install variable fonts or not. Or if you can install them, perhaps you can install the TrueType flavor because that's backwards compatible with TrueType flavored OpenType and old TrueType, but not necessarily the CFF2 based variable fonts. And then there are some apps that have that don't rely on the system font handling, but instead do their own font handling, or they do partially their own font handling. So, for example, some apps can use the system rasterizer to draw the glyphs, but they use their own layout library, such as half-bars, but also others. Or they may have their own rasterizer as well, like the Adobe apps. And then, of course, all these different versions include different versions of these libraries. So, for instance, you know, an app like an open source app like Scribus or Scribus, I'm not sure how you say it, or LibreOffice may use half-bars, but may use half-bars in a certain way or in a certain version that does or does not support variable fonts. So it's quite complicated, and the fact is that, you know, if you made a variable font some time ago and now, you know, some apps have come out that claim or do support variable OpenType fonts, it's a good idea to try to test both the fonts that you're working on, but also the fonts that you've released in the past, because also the tools are changing. So we have this situation where, you know, the pieces of code that are used to generate variable fonts have also evolved. For instance, the font tools library and its varlib component has really evolved very, very quickly over the last 2 years. And, you know, lots of bug fixes, but also lots of sort of change or improved capabilities, better handling of certain aspects, such as the stat table, for example, which, you know, was maybe minimal at the beginning, but now it's better. So it's a very sort of dynamic environment. And when I say it's an exploratory session, is that, you know, I want to kind of take your input as well, because, well, I've prepared some things and made some experiments and gathered some experience. But first of all, you know, it's really very hard to do all this testing on all possible platforms, combinations, and apps. It also is complicated in terms of, you know, the licenses, trial versions. You don't necessarily want to buy all these apps that you're never really going to use except for maybe, testing a particular font once. And, if it supports some sliders, you move the sliders, you see, oh, it's okay. And then you no longer need it. So then perhaps a trial version is the best, scenario, but then the trial version may expire. And then, well, yeah, so it's a bit complicated. Well, first of all, I can say that if you have a Mac, if you have Mac OS, you're probably in the most in the best position, in the most privileged position, and on your own machine, you can basically pretty much test on all the devices, at least desktop operating systems. But there's also a way to test Android. I haven't really tried that out, I must admit, and I don't have much experience myself yet with testing on Android, but perhaps somebody else has. But at least for desktop operating systems, there are two apps that I use all the time. One is Parallels Desktop, and the other is VMware Fusion. So that's virtualization machines. There's also a free virtualization machine, VirtualBox, but I found it more complicated to work with. And I think, if you're sort of serious about, if you're serious about doing this testing, then just getting a bunch of operating systems, free or paid, licensed, and these virtualization machines or softwares is worth it. So on, come on. So on the Mac, there's VMware Fusion, and there's Parallels Desktop. Both are able to run multiple operating systems in a box, in a virtual machine. And right now, at the very least, Parallels has released a version that runs on the M1 chip, but lets you run Intel-based operating systems. So that was kind of the thing where the M1-based Macs were introduced. There were these questions. Okay, so am I gonna be able to run Windows on this machine? So not natively via Boot Camp, that's not possible, but it is possible now with Parallels Desktop. I myself have an Intel-based MacBook Pro with 64 gigabytes of RAM, which really helps if you're doing virtualization, running these operating systems, because it could be also fewer, but like 16 gigabyte is the very least. If you want to run multiple operating systems at the same time, then it's better to have more RAM. The reason for it is when you use virtualization, you assign a particular fixed portion of your RAM to that virtual machine. A virtual machine is basically a piece of software that pretends to be a standalone computer to the operating systems and apps that run within it. So when Windows is running in a virtual machine, it sort of thinks, it interacts with virtual hardware the way it would with normal hardware, you know, screen, hard drives, etc. And the virtual machine sort of provides a software layer that emulates all that. It's also very useful in a sense that a whole virtual machine with some apps and data usually takes some gigabytes. Like, you know, smaller Linux installations may take 5, 6, 8 gigabytes. Maybe another version of Mac OS or Windows might take 30 or 40, but it's all packaged in a folder with some virtual drives, basically big files that hold like ISO images or something, or big zips, not really zips, but that hold all the hardware of all the hard drive data of Windows or Linux or whatever. So you have these packages, and you know, when you main, it's best of course to run it on a fast hard drive, so like an SSD. But when you're done, you can move that whole thing to an external hard drive. These are cheap. And then at some point, if you need to run that particular operating system, you may move it again. It's very simple. It's not like, you know, installing a different computer. So once you have this, you can also make a copy, a clone of a virtual machine, and maybe, you know, install some new software in one copy. And then you think, okay, that's now complicated. I don't want to uninstall it. You just delete the whole virtual machine and you use the older copy again. So it's quite flexible. And yeah, I'm using Parallels to run Windows 10. Actually, a Windows 10 that I've installed as a boot camp installation. So on Mac OS, you can have a separate native, if it's an Intel Mac, you can have a separate native installation of Windows on a separate partition, but then you have to restart your computer to run it, but then it runs at native speed with OpenGL, hardware acceleration, etc., which is great for some tests. But then, for most cases, you can sort of set up both Parallels Desktop and VMware Fusion to use that bootcamp installation as a virtual machine. Then it doesn't create these big files. It just sets up a small set of files, like, you know, a couple of megabytes that has some drivers and some information, accesses this Windows partition, but runs the system in a window or full screen, but you can work in parallel between them. And it's really great. Most of these things support drag and drop, so you can just drag from your, you know, Mac operating system directly to the Windows app, and the files open. It's really convenient. It's really now very, very evolved. The reason why I'm mentioning those two apps is that VMware has like a longer history of being on the market, so it supports many, many operating systems, including older ones. So I also have like VMware machines with Windows 98 and Windows 3.1, but I'm not going to get into them today. But also VMware has a set of products for Windows. So if you have a Windows machine, you can also use VMware Workstation, I believe is the name. And there you can install various operating systems. Unfortunately, for licensing reasons, you are not allowed legally to install Mac OS on a virtual machine if that virtual machine runs on Windows or on a PC. Technically, it's possible, but it's not permitted. But if you have a Mac, then VMware Fusion lets you to also install and run various versions of Mac OS 10. And in fact, just a few months ago, when I had my old machine, I was still on an older Mac OS, like 12.6, I believe, even still, like 10.12.6 for a long time. But in VMware Fusion, I installed, the newer versions, Catalina, Mojave, and then Big Sur. And then at some point after testing, which apps of the ones that I wanted work, which don't, I kind of upgraded to Big Sur. But then I have a Mac OS 12.6 installation in VMware, in a VMware virtual machine, where I have my old software, like FontLab Studio 5 or Photographer 5, which are both 32-bit Mac apps, and also many other apps that no longer work, that aren't being upgraded for various reasons, so they don't work on Big Sur, but they work on this older Mac system. So it's also, virtualization is a key thing, because it not only allows you to test fonts in various environments, but also gives you this ability to, keep a certain installation of apps, tools, portable. So, you could have, if you're using older font development apps, you can get VMware Fusion, for instance, install macOS Sierra 10.12.6 there, install all the apps there, package the whole thing, and it will work sort of forever. And the same goes for Windows. So it's really like a, it's like a virtual environment. And this thing about virtual environments is quite big. If you're a Python developer, you've heard about it. Basically, such a virtual machine is kind of like a super package. You get the desktop or everything, and mostly these virtual machines, if you install special drivers within Parallels Desktop or VMware Fusion, then you get the ability to access your host, meaning the actual machine, the file system. So you can, you can go from your little boxed window and access your real file system, open fonts or files from there, etc. So that's, yeah.
Sorry, a question came up from Alexander. How fast is that older Mac OS installation in VMware? Does it work well?
Okay, well, that's a great. So I have right now here, if you can you see my screen with those little things on top?
Yes.
Okay, so I have Parallels Desktop running Windows 10. I have Linux Mint 64, macOS 10.12 Sierra, Windows 7, and Ubuntu 64 Linux, all running sort of at the same time. Let's go to Sierra. And it needs a minute to wake up. It's not super, super fast. You can see sort of some, screen redraw issues, but so it's slower than Windows. Windows really works quite fast. macOS 10 older versions don't work super fast. So, I wouldn't play games on it, but generally speaking, let's see. So it's not, it's not great for like intensive work, but for testing. For testing, it's fine. And for, apps that don't necessarily require like lots of permanent redrawing. So animation, movies, etc. You would get this flickering, but I'm using it, and I just noticed that. So this is, by the way, Mac OS 10. I just noticed that Chrome, the newest version of Chrome, in this VMware environment has some weird screen redraw issues, but probably this isn't related to the VMware itself. But this is just, what I wanted to show, so I'm going to do away with it. Older versions of Chrome didn't do it this way. But just to make a point, macOS 10.12, for instance, did not have like this full API, I believe, for accessing variable fonts, even though it all originated from TrueType GX, but there were some changes done in Cortex, so not everything was exposed. But Chrome on older operating systems used FreeType and half-buzz. And I believe in 10.12.6 it's still using FreeType to render, and therefore in Chrome, the sliders work, while in Firefox, which does not have this this trick, is that Firefox? Yeah, that's Firefox. Here, no, that's Chrome again. Sorry, my bad. Yep. I'm gonna do this, and then switch back to the. Well, this is also a variable font, so I can test it here. So yeah, here you don't get the output. Was there some? Okay, hang on. I'll just. So 10.12.6 is working fine, and I'm occasionally using it in VM Fusion. I haven't tried Parallels, I must admit, because simply I personally just have more experience with VM Fusion, VMware Fusion, and I've been using it longer. So I don't know how, let's say, macOS inside macOS would perform on Parallels. Okay, I'm going to close this because, as I said, older versions of macOS. Again, this is 10.12.6. Then there was 13, 14, 15, and then there was Big Sur 11. And I think around 10.14, which I believe was Catalina, Apple has added more support for variable fonts, originally TrueType flavored only. So you would get, better behavior, increasingly better behavior on macOS, both for desktop font installation and especially browser behavior in Safari. So on this one, 10.12.6, on Safari, it also doesn't work. Yeah.
One more quick question came up, and it was, would you recommend a virtual machine to assess hinting on Windows when designing on Mac? How true is the rendering?
I've checked, and it's very true. So basically, there is absolutely. This is we can take a look at that. Hang on. 1, 2. Okay. Let's have a look at Windows 10. So here, I've got a bunch of virtual extra large icons, maybe, yeah. Sorry, variable fonts in a couple of folders. I have variable OTFs. So source Hansan's OTF. It's great. It does say TrueType here, which is a bit confusing, but it previews, so it works now in the newest OpenType font variations, says it here. Okay. OpenType layout, interesting. Digitally signed TrueType outlines, even though it is actually CFF2. So I guess that bit is not updated yet. But it does render, and yeah, you can sort of see that the I'm not sure what the status of the hinting is. Let's see, source sans variable. Okay, it looks sort of similar, but yes, it's definitely, you know, it's definitely real Windows rendering. And oh, okay. I think I'm not sure how to. Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, you should. So this is for an OTF, and then if I go back to variable TTFs, oh, come on. Variable TTF, and let's take a look at this one, for instance. This is a, you know, a high. So yeah, you can see, for instance, here that it's using, you know, subpixel rendering. So it's a very condensed. It's showing the. I mean, this preview just shows the neutral master, but I'm going to close this. So if I want to install these on Windows, you know, if I have a folder, the easiest way to do it is select, right-click, and say install. You can also install for all users. And okay, I've already installed them, but that's fine. You know, this is the quick way to do it on Windows. Oh. That's okay. Well, that's a green screen now. Sorry, I didn't expect that, but yeah, running. It's possible that it has to do with. I'm running an insider build, so it's like of Windows 10. So it's like a public beta. It's not the official release. It's sort of more cutting edge, but I would say that, you know. There are issues to be expected. But at the very least, you know, again, it is quite convenient if you're using virtual machines. For instance, you know, you may install some software. You can make kind of like this snapshot of the current version of your virtual machine in both of these virtualization environments. Then you can install some new software, and if something goes wrong, if the system is misbehaving or crashing, or it suddenly bloated your virtual machine a lot, then you can always roll back. So in this case, it's fine. I didn't I didn't have that problem.
We just had a comment, I think, about DPI, and that maybe running, looking at stuff on the Mac screen is going to be much higher DPI than a typical Windows Office user is using. And somebody else said use an external monitor.
Yes, that's a very good point, and I'll say right away. So, for instance, I can show it in that is a very good point. When I look, okay, it's sort of suspended now, but that doesn't matter. For instance, in VM Fusion, in display, there is a checkbox that says use full resolution for Retina display, and basically, if you do that, then on the Retina, if you turn it on, then on the Retina screen, it will use the Retina high density, and then kind of set internally for Windows a much higher DPI, like 144 or something, or maybe 200, I don't remember. And then you'll not necessarily get what the average Windows user is using. But if that checkbox is off, then the whole, even on a Retina display, the whole Windows virtual machine, the Windows where you see the Microsoft Windows, the window in which you see Microsoft Windows, that's running in the sort of low resolution mode. So you don't necessarily even need an external monitor, but it's helpful if you make once you install these special tools by Parallels or VMware, then also resizing the window in which you have the virtual operating system will automatically change the resolution inside it, so it will always match. And therefore, for instance, if you move it to an external monitor that is low DPI, you make it full screen, you'll get like 1920 by 1080 resolution, and it really looks like Windows is running there on the second monitor. But even if that monitor is high DPI, if you turn off the use full resolution for Retina display, you'll still get the 2K rather than 4K image, which is more sensible for getting the impression that users would get on most Windows apps. So that's a very good point. Let me just check something. Okay, that works. It works. It works. Okay, good. I think we can go back if I manage to do it. Yep. Okay. Just bear with me for a second. It's what was that? Okay, let me do it differently. There. Okay. Yep. And now this. Okay, and you can sort of see that Windows is now, I just made it full screen, and Windows has kind of adjusted the resolution. So once you've installed these internal tools by Parallels or VMware, it's called Parallel Tools, I think, and VMware Tools, it's somewhere in the menu. Then you'll get this dynamic changing of the resolution. So no matter if you make the virtual machine window full screen or you resize it, the pixels will be always 1:1, or if you turn off Retina, it will be 2:1 or whatever. But it's not going to be sort of weirdly distorted with some weird anti-aliasing stuff going on. So yeah, so we have. Let's take a look at. So this is Windows. So I've installed the variable fonts. And now I can, well, first of all, I can test it, since okay, let's take a look. So first I'm going to do, okay, yeah, this is probably not related to it. This was an OTF based, but I'm looking at this bulletproof font tester, which I like a lot, bulletproof.italic.space. It's just very handy and just has the right set of features for quite flexible font testing. I'm going to drop this one, and here, set maybe M's. So this is the Windows, this is the Windows the real Windows rasterizer, and I can, easily preview things. And if I use like this magnifier tool from Windows, I can see more clearly what's going on. And of course, I can take screenshots easily and then compare it, look at it in a image viewer. And then there's of course so that's been browser, and as I've mentioned, there's also a version of Windows 7 that I have where similarly, in Windows 7, that doesn't matter. In Windows 7, as far as I can tell, I haven't really installed. I'm not sure what the software requirements are for like Illustrator 2020 or 2021. What's the minimal Windows version? But at least from what I can tell, one thing that works on Windows 7 is Chrome, and because it's there again using the FreeType rasterizer. So this is, I'm looking at, I believe, Firefox here, which is not working. Yeah, I don't get the variation. But if I go to Chrome, because it's using this fallback system of FreeType on older systems, here I get the variation behavior, but the rendering is FreeType. So in this particular case, you would not, for variable fonts, you would not get the Windows rasterizer, because in Windows 7 the Windows rasterizer wasn't able to do it. But you get FreeType rendering, which may be helpful because it's sort of more or less the same rendering as people on Linux would get. Okay, so that's browser. So we have three major browsers. It's a Safari, or three major engines, because on Windows 10, for instance, I believe that I was actually testing not in Google Chrome, but in Microsoft Edge, the new one, which is based on the Chromium project. So, right now, Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome both use Chromium, and you'll get comparable results. So it doesn't really matter in this aspects which browser you're using. And that's the browser that uses the system font rendering on the newest operating systems, but has this FreeType fallback for systems like Windows 7, Windows 8 probably, and also macOS 10.12.6 and probably 10.13. And from 14, I believe, 10.14, it's using Cortex, so the system font rasterizer. So you'll get different rendering in Chrome. And then Firefox and Safari, they rely on what's on the ability of the system rasterizer to display variable fonts. So in older systems, it just doesn't work at all. There's also another caveat which I might go into a moment, and that is both Chrome and Firefox use the half-buzz library. I think that both use it fully to do feature processing, which means while Safari on the Mac uses Cortex. So it's still useful if you have a new operating system for the Mac, like macOS 10.14, 15, and also or 11. It's useful to test on all three browsers, or at least two of them, Safari and Chrome, or Safari or Microsoft Edge. for Windows. That doesn't matter. So for Mac, because on Safari, everything will be rendered through the Mac OS internals, meaning the line layout and feature processing and the rasterization. While on Chrome, the line layout and feature processing will be done through half-buzz, and then the rasterization will be from the system. So these two steps, they're really quite independent, and depending on what you're testing. So if you're testing, mark positioning, or you're testing complex features for indic scripts, doesn't matter whether it's a variable font or a static font, you should check both browsers. Is that
Adam?
Yeah.
So there were a couple of questions that came up in the Q&A, which I missed because I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, excellent. Go ahead.
Let me read them. This is from Ada. Would you be able to share some useful VM profiles, system browser version, etc., for those who aren't familiar with the lower level versioning? I think this would be useful for both Windows and Mac users, especially if someone develops primarily in only one of the environments and isn't familiar with the other. Second question is, do we care about Windows 7, even Microsoft stopped the support?
That's a good question. If probably perhaps somebody else, I could do it, but, perhaps somebody in the audience might be so keen to check what the current, more or less somewhere on the net, more or less the operating systems distribution is, how much Windows 7, 8, and 10 going. But I have a feeling that Windows 7 is still fairly strong in kind of lower end environments because, if people have installation, especially in like corporate environments, people have lots of deployed software and they don't necessarily want to upgrade their systems. They may get a new operating system within a new machine, but when was Windows 10 released? Like 3 years ago, or is it longer than? 5 years ago. Okay, well, that's okay. So yeah, that's true. That's just the number that Windows 10. The major version number doesn't change, but of course, especially within Windows 10, I don't also exactly know how the deployment goes. But I know that if you compare the Windows 10 from 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and today, they're really quite different beasts, and that minor version numbers, which I must say, Microsoft has changed a few times the way they kind of give you this information. There's like a build number and there's something else, but effectively something like Windows 10, March 2021. Will have way more capabilities, will be much more, is really much better in terms of, color font support, this OpenType SVG, variable fonts that all came in sort of post Windows 10 original release. But I'm also, this is like the stats. I know that the Windows market is slightly more fragmented because, there are these different versions of Windows 10 and there are the older operating systems, but I haven't really checked, the stats myself. But I know that people use Windows 7 still, especially, as I said, in organizations, corporate environments, schools, all kinds of places. So that sort of touches on the viability of deploying only variable fonts and static instances. And then especially important, the family naming, and I'll get to that in a moment. But let me just go back and show.
So we have some numbers that have been pasted into the chat, and I do not know if these are accurate, but I'll read them and a link to where they came from. So Windows 7 at about 16.3% of the market share worldwide, and Windows 8.1 at 3.5%. So if those numbers are accurate, we're looking at about 20%, or actually around 22% of Windows users are not on Windows 10.
Yeah, it sort of. I think people who moved to Windows 8, also, I believe, because it was very easy to upgrade to Windows 10 at some point, like it was almost automatic. They got a larger adoption, but the ones who kind of are still, decidedly on Windows 7, there's still some portion. So yeah, and of course it probably also depends on country, etc. So when you checked your your browser experience, which I think is the most.
I'm sorry. Ada's pinging us saying, you didn't answer my VM question.
Oh, sorry. About the profiles.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what a VM profiles means, I must say. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's come back to that then. Let's
okay.
Come back to that and see if,
perhaps you could.
Oh,
one of these modifiers is supposed to be working or not? No, I don't know.
Right,
sorry.
So she did reply, the setup for various systems, what to check.
Okay. Yes, I see. Yeah, I could try sharing my experiences about it. It's a good point. So yeah, I'll look into it. There's generally speaking, I'm because we're not using super heavy apps inside these VMs, it's generally sufficient to assign like about 4 gigabytes of RAM to any virtual machine. I think for Mac OS, I give it more like 8. But for Windows, it's fine with just 4. So, and yes, if other than that, install these tools, turn off the Retina or high DPI stuff, and I mean install the tools as in Parallels tools or VMware tools. Yeah, but I'll if I have something specific, I'll try to kind of post it somewhere. I'm not sure quite where.
We do have a Slack for the participants, so maybe we can post it there.
I think I would have to think about it a bit, because it's like, some of these machines I've configured myself like months or a couple of years ago, and therefore I don't, I'm not necessarily like sure that but yes, okay. So another good thing about, so what's important if you care about storage space, and that's actually a good point, there are ways which you might need to Google. Okay, I can actually show it in Windows. That's good. So Windows Control Panel, that's important. Control Panel, and there's System somewhere. System, okay, and then there's this old Advanced System Settings, yes. Yeah, that's my favorite stuff. That's where the good stuff sits since Windows Well, I know how it works, but then, yeah, then there is settings, and then first of all, I often do turn some of these things off, especially the animations, because they're kind of causing these flickerings. So I usually do like adjust for best performance, and then maybe turn some things. Yeah, I turn on smooth edges of screen fonts. Otherwise, it's silly. But like drop shadows, that stuff I turn off, and then I would do apply, and then probably the appearance of Windows will become a bit plainer, but still on Windows 10 it's not such a big difference.
Okay, so when you set up these VMs, they're basically a snapshot in time. The updates don't get applied to them, correct? So
well, no, I mean once I have this VM of Windows and I don't do anything specific, whenever I run it, it's like as if I booted, a Windows computer after 2-3 weeks of not using it. And then, of course, I'll get Windows update telling me, yeah, you need to update. So what I usually...
So they're representative of really machines out in the real world.
Yes.
These operating systems and apps.
Yes, there is a specific... So basically, both Parallels and VMware have a specific sort of set of, emulated hardware. So it's always emulating a particular graphics card, a particular network card, etc. And so you don't necessarily, so for stuff like, so there are problems if you need to test things like DirectX or Direct 3D, OpenGL or Metal. So like these hardware accelerated drawing routines in apps, they won't necessarily work. So there are some caveats to it. But I'll just mention one thing that I usually do. So then again, in these advanced system settings, I also go to advanced virtual memory and I set it to no paging file, because it's basically, on the real Windows, it's useful to have this ability to, the system dumping or like putting some of the stuff that's in its memory onto the hard drive if it doesn't fit. But that means that if I assign, basically inside a virtual machine, it doesn't make sense. And also there are ways to like disable hibernation in both emulated or virtualized Mac OS and Windows. And I recommend that because otherwise those files, I can actually show the files. Sorry. Okay. Just hang on a second. Yeah. So my virtual machines are here. And you can see, for instance, the Linux Mint is 18 gigabyte. My Mac OS 10 server 10.6.8, which still runs PowerPC apps for the Mac, is 10 gigabyte. 10.12 is 25 gigabyte. Ubuntu is 9. Windows 1.0 is 26 megabyte. Windows 3.11, 1 gigabyte. 98, 3 gigabyte. XP, 6 gigabyte. 7, 8.5 gigabyte. And my Windows 10 is on a bootcamp partition, so it doesn't use that. But basically, there are these virtual hard drives inside. And I always split it. There is an option in VMware to say split these into 2 gigabyte pieces. I'm not sure whether it's sensible or not, but I do it. Maybe it's not anymore. If you had like a paging file in Windows or a hibernation thing, that would just inside these containers would suddenly add up to as much gigabytes as you've assigned as RAM. So like if I assigned, 8 gigabyte of RAM, then suddenly my virtual machine hard drive storage would also take up 8 gigabyte more RAM for no real benefit, because you're not, if it's crashes, it crashes. If it runs out of memory, whatever, you restart it, just you close the window and restart it. So it's not so so crucial. And these are the things that I disable. But I'll try to maybe publish some notes. Okay, where was I? I was in Windows 10. Okay, so in Windows 10, and also there are some internal snapshotting things like that I also turn off in Windows. But I would have to check. I've kind of done it, but I don't remember where these things are anymore. But okay, let's see. So new Windows 10 does support installation of variable fonts of both flavors, and then I should be able to get, what was it? Okay, so Acumen variable concept that I have installed. Okay, anybody, right. So anybody is the font that I installed here myself. And since this is Illustrator 2021, it does support, you know, the variable fonts this way using the sliders, and I can also choose, you know, predefined instances. That works fine. Well, let's say what Adobe InDesign CS2 would do. I haven't really tried it, so okay, I'm going to boot it, start it, and you know, so we have, especially with Adobe apps, it's rather similar to the situation with browsers. So Adobe applications, generally speaking, do font handling completely on their own. So first of all, it's possible to install fonts in an Adobe font-specific folder, so that fonts, for instance, CFF2-based variable fonts that aren't supported by a particular operating system, you can still install them inside the Adobe font folder, and then these fonts will be only seen by Adobe apps, which is really rather a unique functionality compared to all other applications that are out there. Excuse me. So so here I'll just zoom in, and that thing was called anybody, right? Got yeah. Okay, and then yep. So that's what you know, that's what's expected. That is basically, I only get the default instance of the variable font, and that's what you would get from in many cases where you have a there's, so I only get one instance which corresponds to the default master, and that's of course, you know, a problem. But there are also other problems. There are problems where what I want to do now. Oh, okay. Oh, 12. Let's take a look at Linux. So I highly recommend, if you're into VMware, for Linux, it's actually much easier to get a working Linux installation, because there is this project called osboxes.org. And osboxes.org hosts a large number of mostly Linux-based operating systems in pre-packaged sort of virtual disks and pre-configured for both VMware and VirtualBox, not for Parallels. This is why, among others, I use VMware, because VMware you can also use it on Windows and on Mac. And these Linux operating systems, they come sort of pre-installed, pre-configured. You can download a bunch of them just to see how different Linux versions would work. And there you need to create a new machine, choose that it's Linux, Ubuntu, for instance, and then say use virtual disk, and you will get this VDMK file downloaded, zipped. So you unzip it from osboxes.org. You unzip the VDMK, you create a new machine, point to it, and then it creates this new virtual machine. You're able to boot it, launch it. There's usually a few apps pre-installed. The login is always osboxes.org, and the password is the same. You can change it afterwards, but that's sort of the defaults for all these virtual machines from this project, and it's super convenient. And Linux installations usually don't take up so much time, but it's actually pretty interesting because, okay, so let's take a look how it would work. So I'm gonna. So the way I've realized, I'm not really an expert in using Linux, but I was pleasantly surprised that, for instance, the newest Ubuntu does support sort of variable fonts in general, not only variable TTFs, but also variable OTFs, like, Sans, Hans, etc. And then if I say install, it probably, yes. So installation on Ubuntu and a couple of other Linux systems, basically the fonts go by default into the home folder and then .local/share/fonts. So it's like tilde/.local/share/fonts. And I can click them one by one, or I can just, open it, navigate to it, and then, it doesn't matter. I move them, but, and I can just install them, with, Control maybe? Yes, Control will copy. So so now they should be installed. And now I can run an app such as LibreOffice Writer, for instance, and open the last document I had. Okay, and here, choose, here you will notice that this is effectively a problem in the actual font. The default instance, or the regular master, the default instance, I think, is called Ultra Condensed Thin, and then LibreOffice, other apps will just show the anybody because that's the family. But actually LibreOffice will show also that default instance name appended, which is a bit confusing. But then if I go to Format Character, I can see that, it sort of works. So these are, I only installed the virtual font. So I get predefined instances out of this font, but somehow they don't really, not all of them work properly. So there's something probably wrong with the font, but maybe, that Linux subsystem is misbehaving. But this is worth, finding out and see, okay, because if I choose source serif variable, for example, I get the previews of all the predefined instances fine. And yeah, there's also a little features. You know, I could choose, what is it? Outside figures, maybe. Say okay. Yep, works. So in LibreOffice on Linux, actually both variable fonts, if they're sort of well made and tested, seem to work. And also features seem to work. Pretty cool. I didn't know that before I tried to test it. Another app that's worth checking out might be CorelDRAW. CorelDRAW 2021. As long as it's when it okay started my trial version that I installed. Yeah, get started. I really want to get started. Okay. Yes. Thank you. What is it? Text tool. Okay. Hello world. Is yes, F2. That's the. I used to use CorelDRAW, and I remember that the marquee zoom there is F2. Okay, I don't want the hints. I want something else. Window, Dockers. Oh yeah, text. No, fonts. Bugger. Glyphs. Where is it? Character. That I don't remember that much. What is text? Oh, okay, it is text. Good. Or probably I can make this Docker longer. Yes. Good. I can increase that text, and I can try choosing. Now that's pretty neat. I can say filter. Here I can say variable fonts, font technology, variable fonts, and I only get the variable fonts that I have installed on the system. Very nice. Which anybody, yeah, I've got some predefined instances right here. If I edit, I also get a chance to, come on, click on this little thing and get a little sampling of different, of the selected text with some features activated. For instance, stylistic set, I get the preview on the live text. I can choose that. Very nice. And yeah, here I get the sliders. Very nice. Here I also get pretty much, you know, all kinds of lots of features. It's a bit lots of features like annotations, pretty much the most complete GUI for accessing features, and variable fonts with all sorts of features seem to be working on the Windows version, and also in CorelDRAW 2021 on the Mac, which which runs fine. And yeah, I've tested it before. I'm not gonna sort of show it now, but you can get a trial version. It really, I think, the combination, even though people used to make fun of Corel, of course, and it was a Windows only app for many years, quite able. I used to use it, and I must say that the access to the typographic repertoire now in Corel Draw is really, really decent. And there's for glyphs, there's kind of an ability to just filter and then use from different fonts here, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, in the glyphs palette, I get these alternates. It's really cool. There's one more app that I should mention, and on the Mac, because I've been sort of ignoring my the native environment that I'm working here. I've been showing these virtual machines all the time, but let me get back here. Okay. So that's Sketch. So I can do insert text. I can say hello. Oops. I should be. Let's get, what was it? I want to use the same. What was the name of the, anybody? Yeah, sorry. Right. Okay. So here, I get the list of the predefined features, and I also, oops, that's weird. That's not what I wanted. It switched back somehow to the font that I had previously selected. Come on. Anybody? Okay, maybe this way. Anybody? Okay, and now up. It's a bit slow, I'm not sure why. So okay, here that works. And okay, now it works. So I get the sliders, and so Sketch is pretty much kind of the most accessible app on Mac OS, where you get the GUI for variations, and that uses, I believe, Sketch probably uses just core text, so Mac OS system font handling and Mac OS system rasterization. So that's a good thing to test versus, for instance, Adobe Illustrator or InDesign, which will use Adobe's own font handling on Mac and Windows the same, but Adobe's. And Corel, I'm not sure what they're using for rasterization, but I'm pretty sure that they're using probably half-buzz for the line layout. So it's more...
Sorry, Adam, there was a question that ties in with that came from John Hudson about complex RTL and complex script support in Corel Draw. So, I don't know if we need to check it now or we can look at that later, but if it's using half-buzz, I'd expect it to work, but who knows?
Yeah, let me just... I find it quite funny with the. Okay, now
everyone's having you do all the work first. That's fine.
Parallels. Is that here? Yeah, that was here. Parallels desktop. It's sort of so weird to just be switching between like 5 different operating systems, and you just sort of, it kind of feels like it's the same thing. Okay, so I've got oh dear, sorry, I need to zoom in once again. So I just pasted some Unicode text, but I had chosen a font. So let's say style OpenType. Oh, Arabic. Okay, character range Arabic. Right, so I get Changa or Changa. This was Georgian and Armenian, which was here. So I'll just do Latin and Arabic, and I'll go back to text, and I'll click here. That's by Eduardo Tuni. Yep, that seems to work. At least the Arabic looks fine, and it's variable. And
so yeah, John, it gets a thumbs up from John. So great.
Very good. So yeah, so this is we're now sort of well, 1 hour 15 minutes of me talking. So I need to take a sip of tea, but also this is pretty much what I've prepared. Okay, so I see Alexander Habera is saying Affinity Publisher gives you predefined instances at the moment. I'll just Publisher on Designer as well? Perhaps. I'll check Designer. Affinity Designer. Starting.
So Luke has said all
Affinity. Okay. Right. Very good. Yeah. Unfortunately, as far as I remember, Affinity apps don't really support complex scripts very well yet. So because they're using, well, I was kind of back and forth with the text engineers when they were developing the initial versions, and they said they're using their own kind of layout or shaping engine, and they will be adding scripts later. And I said, well, yeah, okay, good luck with that, because there's a lot of work, especially figuring out, all the indic behaviors, etc. So I was a bit, well, I don't know what they're doing now in terms of their, but let's take a look. So here, I've got.
So Adam, if you do need to take a tea break, and we can queue up questions while you grab your tea.
Yeah, I just took a sip.
Okay. So yeah, we can invite people to post additional questions, things they want you to try out. Seems to be the theme.
Okay, so here, oops, sorry. Let me just do the switching. So now oh, come on, go away. Affinity is coming. So here's Affinity Designer on the Mac, and as you can see, the Arabic does not look okay. I don't. This is basically left to right disconnected, and but I'll try. Yes, the predefined instances work. So as far as the a vector-based, right now I would sort of claim, it's not substantiated, but I would claim that CorelDRAW is the best sort of app to make, small kind of things that extensively use, and of course the browsers. But in terms of sort of being able to just arrange stuff and having a GUI for features and for variations and support for complex scripts, I think CorelDRAW 2021 is currently your best bet. It's about $400 something, I think. And it does, import PDFs, export PDFs, do all that thing. So it's fine, and I'm happy that, they've done a lot of work, really put a lot of work into these UIs and things that maybe other makers of design apps have been sort of listening for, but haven't really done it. Corel has done it, so I think that's good. Affinity is otherwise fine, but because they don't seem to be using something like Halfbuzz, but rather their own engine, I'm kind of pessimistic about their how fast they can get right to left and complex script support.
So there's Lawrence has a question. Although your browser should support all the complex scripts pretty robustly, Lawrence is asking, have the apps like Canva, how well do they support complex scripts and variations?
Well, certainly something that is sort of not really using browser stack like Figma, but actually using their own technology and just WebGL streaming, then it's a custom solution, and then your mileage may vary. So as far as I remember, for instance, Figma does support complex scripts, but only left to right. So they bundle, for instance, a bunch of Noto indic fonts, and they work as static instances, though. There's a new plugin for Figma which lets you sort of instantiate, so open a variable font and then instantiate a static instance and then use it within Figma. And I think it actually uses some of the Samsa JS that Lawrence has created, but it doesn't support right to left. I guess mostly because of the cursor selection and things like that. It's complicated. So, but that's not really using the web. It's sort of just using the web view as if the browser were a TV screen, and you're actually looking at something that is being streamed. WebGL, so the app is actually running on a server, as far as I understand. But for Canva, if it's using just the browser stack, meaning HTML, CSS. So yeah, something like Canva, or perhaps, Webflow or something, that should let you use pretty much everything. It just depends on whether the design axes, sliders or something like that, and also OpenType features, whether the apps have GUIs for them. Because of course with the web-based solution, you can always kind of supply some CSS yourself, or maybe make a plugin or something, but I'm not sure. Oh yeah, and that Office I forgot about. So maybe perhaps Simon can. Well, Simon is certainly more qualified than I am to say more kind of definitively what's going on with.
Yeah, so thank you, Roger, for asking about that. I don't think we have an official answer. I think I can say that I obviously work in fonts in Office, and I'm aware of the issues and the problems. We are cross-platform, and we care very much about cross-platform. So we've got to get things to work: Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, and web. And we know variable fonts they work in some places and don't in others. We know where the problems are, and we have bugs logged to address those issues. So I wouldn't say it's on the roadmap, but we know where the issues are, and that's looking initially at named instances. So that's the unofficial answer. I think officially we are saying that right now Office does not claim to support variable fonts. So I'm sorry I can't say more than that. Hopefully by the next ATypI we'll have more to talk about. And of course PowerPoint kerning comes up all the time, and I am an advocate very much for passing on feedback to the PowerPoint team on the lack of support for real kerning. Send me your horror stories, send me your complaints and your worst cases, and I will continue to put pressure on the team. Index support in Excel. This isn't my talk. Index support shaping within Excel cells. Okay, I'll take that offline and look into that. But I'm pretty sure I know why that doesn't work. Mac Excel.
Yeah, okay. I just if you can see, so I'm just checking. So there is something going on, but I'm not sure what exactly. I guess. Well, of course. So I guess it's not. Yeah, that's fake bold. So right now I can see that there's. Well, I haven't used Office in a while. I must admit, but I know that kind of the you can select a family, and then of course you can this grouping, as far as I remember, it still sort of gives you the styling groups, or the RBB naming with just 4 styles, and that is so there's probably going to be some solution for that, but that works for static fonts. But variable fonts don't have that mechanism right now, so they give you predefined instances, have these, you could say, typographic styles, but they don't have this fallback mechanism. Those names could be synthesized by the system, I guess. I'm pretty sure in some environments they will, but the way I understand it is that right now Windows 10, basically the APIs behind Windows 10, they expose the variable font. If an app is able to read multiple style names, like typographic style names, then it's fine. But if it isn't, then you only get basically this default instance. You wouldn't get this multiplication of the up to 4 style groups where the style name would be kind of pushed to the family name, etc., etc. So this is this is, and I think that would also then apply to something like WordPad, as which is a good app to just test, like the basic font handling. So since there is not necessarily a way to choose typographic styles, you reduce to the bold and I icon, and therefore you have well, just the default instance, really. But I wanted to show one more thing. So remember, I showed you the LibreOffice on Linux working quite fine. at least with some variable fonts. I'm just getting. Come on. Oops. Okay, no, I don't want to. Okay, I don't want to recover. Sorry, my LibreOffice just. Try once again. New document, write a document. Okay, try to do that. Yeah. Right. So I've noticed on the Mac, there is a problem with. So basically, you get the in LibreOffice, you're able to access. I do character. This actually looks very different from the Linux, but oh yeah, I can access the predefined instances, but somehow the metrics are. I think it always uses the glyph metrics on the Mac. It uses the glyph metrics of the default instance, which makes it problematic, of course. Okay, I don't have that, but yeah. So so on the Mac, LibreOffice has a problem with variable fonts because it's always using the widths from the default instance, while on Linux it doesn't. I haven't tried on Windows, but that's where you have these situations where some apps are kind of using a mixed stack, so they sometimes rely on some information supplied by some libraries or by the system, the rasterization versus line layout. So line layout, so basically character widths, glyph widths, means that there is something broken in the line layout aspect of LibreOffice on Mac, while the images, the glyphs, rendered glyphs, seem to be coming out just fine. Yeah, so I see. Okay, so I've taken a lot. I don't think there are. So if there are any questions, please ask them. Otherwise, we'll be sort of slowly coming to an end. So if you want to contact me, either this address or this address is. Is fine. Just one thing that I didn't mention, but is important, of course, is that if you're using if you want to use Windows in a virtual machine, of course, you need to buy a license for Windows from Microsoft, and I still happen to have like a Windows, these older versions of Windows, and I had some, serial numbers for them from the times like Windows 7 and Windows XP. That was when I was using a PC mostly. And then for Windows 10, I think I bought a Windows 8, and then I got upgraded to 10 or something. But then it didn't work anymore, so I bought. It's not expensive, so once you have the serial number, you can just download like a Windows ISO image, which is now also much easier than it used to be from Microsoft. Like Windows 10, you download this ISO image, and then apps like Parallels and VMware Fusion let you just install, perform a full installation. So as I said, with those Linuxes, you go to osboxes.org and you get these virtual disks. So it's like a snapshot of a disk where that Linux has already been installed. While on let me just show it quickly with VMware, just for those interested. So if I have VMware Fusion, I would go plus new, and then I can say from what. So from disk, that could be an ISO file that you download from Microsoft or Windows 10, or then if you got these installed from Boot Camp, is if I actually had. I have this Boot Camp installation of Windows on my computer on the second partition. You can also install the current Mac OS from the recovery partition in a virtual machine. So you can get, I do have like the Big Sur here. It's sometimes useful if I just want to make some like screen recordings with like a clean slate system, without my customizations, my own dock and everything, just sort of to take some screenshots that may be useful. And then here, create custom virtual machine. I would say continued, and I would choose the version of Linux. So I did get Ubuntu 64-bit, continue, legacy BIOS, I think. I'm never sure. And then choose virtual disk. And then here, if you installed something from osboxes.org, downloaded, you would go use an existing virtual disk, choose a virtual disk. Well, actually, let me just try this quickly. Noob, Linux. Okay. I'm not sure what I should choose for Android. I would have to check, but I did download an Android virtual machine, so I'm not going to do it now, but I would do this and then that, and then choose a virtual disk. In here, in the downloads, yeah, there would be share this disk, this. Here's a VDMK. Let's say take this away from the virtual machine currently using it, and then it would set up a new virtual machine. Okay, so
we have another additional question coming from Alexander, which may take up all the time we have left and more. Could you share some insights with respect to font family building and style naming for variable fonts? I think you mentioned this before.
Yep. So that's a good point, and I can maybe go to Font Lab and show it there. So let's say in Font Info, so that's running in it's the low resolution sort of non-retina screen here, which I'm showing. So if I have a couple of axes, let's say I have the weight axis, the width axis, the slant axis, that's pretty cool. I can do from access defaults, maybe. Here, is there an access graph? No, not really. So I can do, you know, from access defaults. These gives me, these are this text here is so in this particular case, because I've opened TTF, a variable TTF, all the coordinates are in the user coordinates. So this is the standardized scale. There's no designer coordinates that might be, you know, your stem thickness. And here on the user coordinates side, you would have these standardized. No, this is all standardized, and I'm going to just leave it for now here because it's that's sort of a different topic. But that bottom scale, which is the scale that you use within FontLab or in Design Space files, the user coordinates, you can specify kind of like a comma-separated list of values. So let's say I really actually want to have 9 weights. So here, this is thin will be the name particle or style name particle or access instance name, as we call it here. But actually, Rainer proposed the name particle, and I really like it. For the weight element, for the weight aspect of the final style name, so that would be thin, that corresponds to 100. Then if it's multiple words, you surround it with quotes. If you surround it with parentheses, then it means it will be elided, so it will not be used to generate the final typographic style name, but it will be still stored in the stat table. So this is the data that goes into the stat table, because the stat table has these values for each axis separately and gives them names, so that some software can kind of potentially present you, you know, with the, you select a family, like anybody, and then you don't have a huge list of predefined instances, but instead you have sort of predefined axis instances per axis. So there's a drop-down for weight, and that has a couple of names. There's a drop-down for width, and so on. So let's say we keep that here, but then I would just for, you know, for width, maybe I just want to have 3 named points. So I'm going to say condensed is 50, then in parentheses normal, so it will be elided, it will be omitted in when building the style names, meaning the, you know, the old style method where everything is combined. And then because it goes from -10 to 0, I think I'll just say slanted is -10, and just in case, I'm not even sure. Well, okay, I'm going to do that. So I have these, then I can go to instances. I'm going to remove the instances that are here now. And I'm going to say from access. And that will build me, you know, like this large combination. So basically, if I have 9 entries here, 3 times here, so it's 27 times 2, it's 54, I think, right? No. Am I right? No, maybe I'm... No, 9. Somehow it says 90. Maybe I'm... Am I counting it wrong? Okay. Maybe it's... No. Ah, yeah, okay. There was... I see. Yeah, okay. I see now that this count does not update. So it said 90. I had to do apply. That's a small bug. So yeah, now it says 54. Good. So yeah, so I have this combination, and this thing, the style, is basically the old style. Well, old style, not like styling group RBB ancient Windows style, but sort of old in terms of variable fonts. So basically one family and a large list of of style names, all the 54 of them. But that's sort of that's what you get. And then, you know, in FontLab, you're also you can define the style group, which is this Windows style naming, and one of the 4 roles, whether something is, you know, italic, regular italic, bold, bold, italic. But that does not go into variable fonts. That only is written into static fonts. And also here you could theoretically, instead of having this as a one big family. So one thing that I sometimes recommend is you can do something like here in names. I could call it anybody VF, for example, and that would be the variable font. And now in the instances, I could select all these instances, and in family name, I could say anybody OT something. And that means this family name for the instance will only be used when you export the static instance, and this family name will be used for the variable font. And that's something that I wanted to say, that basically, you know, because variable fonts don't work everywhere, users most likely will want, or more advanced users will want to install both the variable font for using in the apps that supports them, but also the static fonts for apps that misbehave with variable fonts or don't work properly. So at least for desktop, you know, deployment, I think it's a good idea to come up with some suffix for the variable fonts, even though, you know, this ambiguation with the suffixes is a bit ugly. But I don't think that static instances are, you know, going to go away anytime soon. There will be apps that will not support variable fonts well for, you know, for many years to come. So users will have to rely on static fonts. But if they happen to be using, you know, let's say CorelDRAW or Illustrator and Office on the same machine, they need both versions to be installed to properly work. So I hope that's writing name ID 25. I would have to. I can't say at the moment. I need to check. Yeah, sorry, I've been switching between all these. Now my head is full of Linux.
That's okay. That's okay. Adam.
Mac and Windows. But I'll get back to you. Okay, so I think this is about it. Thank you very much.
I'm pretty much out of time. I want to give people a little bit of a break before the next session. So thank you so much. Adam, Lawrence is saying sorry to spring it on you after 2 hours. So we should have queued up some of these questions at the beginning. Lots of thank yous in the chat. That was a great workshop.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And well, talk to you in the Hangout at some point as well today.
Absolutely. So everyone, if Adam is a good fixture in the Hangout room, very good value, and we can continue some of these conversations with him over there. So great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to do a cut and paste of the chat before we shut this down. And great. Thanks again, and we'll see everyone at the next one. Thanks.